but I'm troubled about what New Zealand need to do to turn this around.
You can almost feel a lack of confidence in that side. I mean, our backline's static and standing there.
Is it time for a change in the leadership of this All Blacks group? Is Ian Foster, has he coached his last test? Is Sam Cane the right man to lead this team?
You know, we're talking about getting rid of an All Black coach for the first time in the history of the game.
Kia ora everyone, my name's Zach, I love rugby, welcome back to Hakatime Rugby. So guys, the All Blacks have work to do. After that series, it was very evident that the All Blacks were a little bit off the pace against Ireland. Ireland has become one of those teams that have just continued to evolve, continued to get better, and I think their evolution and their improvements really highlight the fact that the All Blacks have stayed relatively stagnant. Now, a lot has been made in recent days about the state of the All Blacks, about their ability to come back or not, and really highlighting the fact that this All Blacks team, both from a coaching perspective, a management perspective, and from a player perspective, are in real trouble. But in my mind, guys, after taking a few days off, after relaxing and reflecting on that series, I don't think it's all doom and gloom. So I'm going to give you guys my perspective on how I recommend the All Blacks improve the squad in preparation for both the South African tour, which I'm going to cover a lot on this channel, as well as for the Rugby World Cup. Okay guys, I'm going to give you my view of a lot of the areas that the All Blacks need to urgently resolve if they want to be competitive in South Africa and if they want to build a team that can challenge at the Rugby World Cup. A lot of this I've covered in collaboration videos that I've done with Max from the Black Jersey, RugbyAnalyst, Rich as well as in my own videos and preview and review of the Ireland Tour of New Zealand. So this should not come as too much of a surprise for you guys. We've touched on a number of these factors already. But where they urgently need to improve is firstly in the tight five, or more specifically, the set piece. Both scrum and line-out have underperformed, particularly in that third test. So I would be targeting selections that can really bolster both the scrummaging and the line-outs. And that means that we may be looking at selecting line-out options or more line-out options in the back row as well. Because, you know, relying on two jumpers can be quite difficult. I know Adi Savia does tend to support as well in the line-out, but we want line-out specialists. We want players that can really turn the tide in terms of the line-outs against a lot of these other teams who have significantly bigger players, both height and size. That's an area that the All Blacks really need to focus on and improve. The next area is the breakdown. So both the ability to dominate the physical exchanges, or first contact, I should say, in both attack and defense. That's going to be really important. It just felt like Ireland in particular, once they got a roll on against the All Blacks, it was very difficult to turn the momentum. On the other side of the ball, Ireland benefited from such quick ball that it's really incumbent on the All Blacks to try and dominate physically in the tackling exchanges and at the breakdown to try and disrupt some of that flow and that ball. Once you slow down the ball, it makes it a lot easier for your defense to set. So that's an area that the All Blacks really, really need to focus on. And probably the last area that I'll touch on that the All Blacks need to focus on is really focused more on the back line, but it is just getting a bit more cohesion. I mean, there were so many handling errors, which just meant that the All Blacks weren't able to build consistent pressure. They weren't able to build long phases. And, these issues just kind of compounded throughout the games and throughout the series, I should say, as well. So it's really important that the All Blacks both lift their confidence and lift their execution if they want to compete against these best teams in the world. I think as well, there seems to be a misalignment in terms of strategy. So we saw a real contrast in the first half and second half of the third test. The All Blacks were playing far more conservatively in that first test. And I think that was to a detriment, right? Because it was clear that a lot of the players were standing out of position, weren't sure where to go, and maybe there's a communication issue, maybe there's a coaching issue. I know a lot of people will think that there is, myself included, and I think that there needs to be a very clear style of rugby played here. My personal view on the All Blacks and what they need to do to be successful, and I've touched on this in my videos, they need to focus on an All Blacks specific style of rugby, and that means attack first minded, right? The All Blacks have some of the best players in the world in particular from an attacking sense. Now, if you look to a man against Ireland, there are certainly some fantastic players there, but man to man, the skill level, I should say, is superior in the All Blacks, and that is something that the All Blacks need to focus on and try to harness. So trying to replicate other teams, it just doesn't work. The All Blacks must play their style and live or die by that style, is my personal view. So my view, the All Blacks should be focusing on strategy that enables these players to play their natural style, which is attack-minded first, and encourages, a lot of offloads and exchanges to be able to dominate teams physically, basically running them off their feet. In all three games, one thing that the All Blacks did very, very well is they were able to use the, one of the subscribers called it the turbo button. So essentially just be able to score tries in quick succession in a small 15 sort of minute window of time. So because of that, the All Blacks will always be competitive. But if they can fix up other areas of the field, if they can tidy up the set piece, if they can improve defensively, if they can target the breakdown, and if they can begin with a strategy that really focuses on harnessing the skill sets and natural abilities of these players, then I believe they have a strategy that can compete against any team in the world and a strategy that can win a Rugby World Cup. So, the last thing I want to touch on is my All Black selection, Hakatime Rugby's All Black selection. So here we have it, guys, on the left over here. And as I mentioned, there are 3 or 4 areas that I really want to focus on. Improving the set piece, both scrum and line out. Improving the breakdown and physicality around the track. And improving and harnessing the natural ability of these players to attack. So some of the changes that I've made. So you will see here at number 2, at hooker, I've elected to start Samisoni Tokeaho. I thought he was the best in form hooker at Super Rugby level. Cody Taylor, for me, really had one of his worst games in an All Blacks jersey, I thought, in Game 3 of that series. Line-out throws were off. Unfortunately, his work around the track not so great as well. But perhaps that's a symptom of him just being in the setup for so long. And I think, having a more of an impact role off the bench could really benefit him. So I've elected to start Tokeaho to carry the majority of the load for this team and bring on Cody Taylor at an effective time around the 55, 60-minute mark to really try and provide impact off the bench. George Bower, there's really limited option here, I think, from a prop perspective. So George Bower, for the most part, held his own. The third test, it looked like collectively the All Blacks kind of dropped their heads in that third game. So don't put the blame all on George Bower. What I do like is the work that he does around the track. So for me, he gets retained. Really difficult one here on the other side. Ofa Tuangafasi, I've gone with. But I want to see a lot more active involvement and rotation. I just think Game 2, Ofa Tuangafasi played far too many minutes. That was forced on him, obviously, through various cards and other things that happened during the game. I think he's got a lot more to offer, and I think we can really build around him. So I would persevere with Ofa there. And from a bench perspective, I bought an Ethan de Groot. I think it was a travesty that they left out Ethan de Groot for the Irish series. He gets there and he gets the nod on the bench for me. And then Tyrell Lomax is the other player that I would look like. The reason I've gone with Tyrell Lomax is more some of the limitations that I've seen in Nepo Laulala. So the last 2 games against Ireland, he has been soundly out-scrummed, unfortunately. He is coming back from injury, so that's a consideration. And perhaps he just needs a bit more time to get over it. But I would be looking for a bit more youth and a bit more impact off the bench as well there. So I've gone with Tyrell Lomax. To the locks, now Patrick Tuipulotu I've bought in. We just need a bit more steel there, particularly in travelling to South Africa. Etzebeth is going to be very difficult to contain. So you want a few players that are really physical first minded. So Patrick Tuipulotu comes in and partners with Sam Whitelock. No surprises there. Brodie Retallick is out, I think, for 4 to 6 weeks. With head symptoms and other issues. So that'll be a selection that we look out for. And from the bench, I've tried to bring in a lot more impact. So Tupou Vai, who brings that mobility in and around the track, gets the nod from me. I haven't seen any reports on Scott Barrett's injury, but from a back row perspective, I've gone with Scott Barrett, Ardie Savea, and Cullen Grace. Cullen Grace has had an outstanding Super Rugby season. He continued that with the Māori. Brings a real physical presence as well as a line-out option. Right, he is quite tall. I think he's 195 meters tall, somewhere around there. So, and he is always used as a line-out option for the Crusaders. So what that actually means is that we have 4 solid line-out options here, and Patrick Tuipulotu, Sam Whitelock, Scott Barrett, and Cullen Grace Artie Savera, as I mentioned earlier, does get used in a line-out capacity, so there's that option as well. And I just really like the makeup of this. If we're going to look to improve the set piece, and in particular the line-out, right, these 4 players, I believe, can get it done against almost any team in the world. Moving on to the back line, so some of the major changes that I've made. Beauden Barrett performs an impact role off the bench. I've brought in Richie Mo'unga. I've gone with the alignment of Richie Mo'unga, David Havili, and Jack Goodhue, namely because we need to improve the defensive structures of this team. To me, having the Crusaders continuity from 10 to 13 really helps us do that. And I typically wouldn't go with Jack Goodhue as my first choice centre, but I just think that this All Blacks team really needs to start building some confidence back, and they need to be surrounded by players that they're familiar with. So to me, the combination of Richie Mo'unga, David Havili, Jack Goodhue, they're an existing partnership. They know each other's game and structures, and I think they give us the best opportunity to turn things around and build confidence back in this team really quickly. In terms of the back 3, so Caleb Clark, if fit, I would bring in for that impact role, the ability to beat players, obviously runs back hard to the defensive line, and we want players that can really bend the defensive line and dominate physically. A bit of a surprise, I've mixed around Geordie Barrett and Will Jordan. One thing that I really like about Will Jordan over Geordie Barrett in the fullback role is that positionally, he just aligns himself far better. If you go back and watch the Super Rugby final, the big difference that I saw between Pedofeta and Will Jordan was just able to put himself in positions to receive ball and therefore put pressure back on the defensive line when he's returning the ball. Geordie Barrett plays a little bit more of a passive role in sort of hanging back and hasn't been getting a lot of good purchase on his return kicks as well. Although we do want him in there for those long range 3-point penalty options as well as kick returns. So I've elected to go with Geordie Barrett on the wing. I know that's going to be controversial to a lot of people. And I also think you have to play your best players in their preferred position. So Will Jordan is a fullback. His preferred position is fullback. He starts at fullback for me. In terms of the remaining selections of reserves, Akira Ioane I thought had a relatively good game there in Game 3. I want to persevere with him. He gives a physical presence. He's obviously great as an impact role off the bench, super mobile and becoming more physical. So I think he could really add something in terms of impact off the bench. Finlay Christie gets the nod for me at halfback. Really difficult here. Folau Fakatava, I think, needs a bit more time to develop. He's certainly great at Super Rugby level, but I think some of the limitations we're seeing there at international level. So Finlay Christie comes in for me. Beauden Barrett comes in, as that reserve 10, 15, wing option if is needed. And Reko Ioane, there really needs to be someone to cover there at centre. I also think that he might be better served covering wing as an option as well there. So I would be looking to bring him on at 14 if required. Or 11 if Caleb Clark requires some coverage. So that's my All Black selection for South Africa, guys. As I mentioned in this video, there are some real issues that need to be addressed right up front and urgently. I know there's a lot of discussion around the coach and his ability to do that. I'm not going to comment on that, guys, because that's one thing that's largely out of our hands. But from this player pool, I do believe there is a team that can be successful in South Africa and a team that can go on to win the Rugby World Cup. That's just my personal view. They've obviously got a long way to go, but I believe in this team. I always have, and I look forward to them coming back and being strong as ever yet again. With that, guys, I'm going to leave it. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.